record on this computer. All right, I think it's doing it. All right, so you say go to /library, and then it's under, where is it? Application support. SketchUp 2021. SketchUp. Plugins. There's all your plugins. And we want to go to CabWriter. So once you get to your CabWriter plugins folder, there's one now, a new one called texture files. So this is where all the files hang out. And
they have to be bitmap, by the way, not JPEG.
Right. So you'll see that, yeah, there's no JPEGs in here. They have to be a .bmp file or bitmap. And Joe reminded me today that I have not done this yet. We have a couple hundred different, we have 3 different folders here with a couple hundred different texture files in them of all kinds of crazy woods. So I'm going to post those up on the website so that you guys can get at them and download any of the ones that you want. So we can see, you know, Bubinga, figured cherry, those sorts of things. And that's where I picked up this ambrosia maple. So what we need to do is put 2 files in for every texture. And they have to have a specific naming convention. They can be anything you want, space H, capital H, and space capital V. And one, of course, is these 2 are both vertical at this point. I'm going to show you how to change that. But if you look at, where's this? Walnut, you see this one's a horizontal one, and this is the same thing vertically. And so what Joe does in the code is if it's a vertical member, he uses the vertical one. If it's a horizontal member, he uses the horizontal one. So I didn't do anything. I just dropped this ambrosia maple in as is, and I just put an H and a V out after it. And that's why it didn't look right when we put it in there. It just tiled it. So I'm going to take that same file and show you what I did to fix it. So where was that? Forgot which folder I got it out of. Oh, you know what I did is I moved it instead of copying it. Uh-oh, where did I put it now? All right, forget that one. Let me just grab, let me grab something here. Oh, we'll use this wormy chestnut. So you're going to have to get yourself some sort of a software that can manipulate photo files. And I've got on the Mac, I've got one called Pixelmator, which is very much like Photoshop, but a lot cheaper. I think it's only like 20, 30 bucks, something like that. And it allows me to manipulate these files. So I realized that this might be something that you just don't have the capability to do. And if you've got, as long as it's not a crazy amount of different files, if you want to send them to us or tell us which ones you want, we could probably manipulate them for you. But basically what we need to do to this is create kind of a 4-way book match as if we were doing veneer, so that every time we take and place that file next to each other, it'll always match with the previous tile. So let me show you what I mean. So right now the canvas on this is 798 by 1240. So I'm going to just double the size of this. What's 798 times 2?
800 times 2 minus 4.
Oh, that's 1596 by 1240. That'd be 2480. Right. So basically, I'm going to put this up in the corner, and I'm just going to duplicate this and move it over here. And then I'm going to just rotate this, flip it horizontally. So you can see it's now book matched. And I'm going to move them both up here to the corner. Oops. And I gotta find my layers here. But like I said, if this is beyond what you want to do, just let us know, and we should be able to do it for you. But I just want to give you an idea of what's going to be happening. So I brought this one down, and now I'm going to flip this one vertically so that it book matches, and then copy and move it over here. And then I got to flip this one horizontally. So now you can see we've created a new version here. I'm going to move these up just a little bit. That is oops. It'll match no matter which way I tile this, sideways or up and down. And now I can just export this as a bitmap file. And I'm going to put it right into my plugins folder, which I have bookmarked here, and into CabWriter and into the texture files. And I'm going to call this one, since it's vertical, I'm going to put a V after it. And then what I can do is I can rotate canvas left 90 degrees. So now this is a horizontal one, and when I export it, I'm going to put an H after it. And now, if I look in my texture folder here, I can see that I've got chestnut wormy horizontal and chestnut wormy vertical. So now I can go back and change my material texture. And I can make my door and drawer panel wormy chestnut. And now if I select this cabinet, go up and draw, texture selection, you can see now that as it tiled this going down, it looks a little more uniform, or at least book matched. So it's not so crazy looking. It's not always going to give you the greatest pattern, but obviously something that's got a lot of strong character to it is just going to look like that. And then if I wanted to texture the entire model, I could do so. And it gets everything with that texture. Except for these back panels here, which I had a different texture for back panels and side panels. I was going to say something else about this. Oh, so if you want to just do a color,
Great.
you have,
Before you do that, can you show them how to make those tiles take spread over a larger area
oh, yeah,
by scaling here?
yep. So yeah, I should have done that because I like it a little bit bigger. So if I go to, where did my, oh, my menu went over on my other monitor here. So if I go into the colors menu here and go to colors and model, and so you can choose any of these things. If I go to colors and model, you'll see these patterns that I have in here. If I click on one, so this is just SketchUp stuff at this point. And I go down here, I can edit that. And right now it's got a width of 10 inches by 10 inches. And I can switch that. I think a lot of my other ones are 36 by 36. So basically what SketchUp's going to do, and then I have to, oh no, I guess I don't have to update it, just close it. Make sure that's stuck. Yep. So now if I redo it,
It's already redone.
oh, it is, yeah. So you see what it did? It spread out that pattern to make it a lot larger. So you can play with the size of your texture as well to have it sort of cover what you want. So maybe half that would be a little bit better. And if you want to use just a color, and basically you can pull any kind of a JPEG file or whatever off the internet of any pattern or texture or color or paint or wallpaper or whatever you want. And you just got to convert it to a bitmap file. So you need to have some kind of a program that will convert your photos for you. And then you can add that the same way to the plugins, to the CabWriter plugins folder where the texture files are. Joe, I don't know if you know, I don't think the colors tab here that SketchUp uses to, like if you just wanted to, like that I did for these walls, I just used one of the colors in here. I don't know where SketchUp stores those. It probably doesn't store just colors. It probably just creates them as you do it. So I don't know where you would go in SketchUp folders to pull these colors out. You might have to actually take a screenshot or download that color or something like that and put it in there.
Well, you can export any material to a file. I don't know how to do it on the Mac, but someplace there, you can export those things. Yeah, don't know how to do it on the Mac, but
Okay.
you can save those things as a file.
Okay.
Someplace there. Maybe if you right click on one of them, right click on a color.
There's edit and duplicate.
Try edit, see what that does. And you might be able to see a save. No?
Maybe you can show us on the
You see,
on the PC, and then I can figure it out for the Mac and let everyone know. Does anybody, did I thoroughly confuse everybody, or anybody have any questions on that? I'll try to figure out how to export a texture.
let me just quickly
I
look
have a
at.
question.
Yep.
If you texture something and you want to preserve that texture on a particular cabinet or component, does the CabWriter protected feature work for that?
Oh.
Well,
So-
I think what you're asking is, well, let me just make a statement. Once you texture a cabinet, that material name is saved in the DNA of the cabinet. Maybe Greg, if you bring out the DNA of one of those cabinets.
Yeah, I think what she's asking though is if she protects a component and then you texture that cabinet and it had a texture on it that was something different, would you override that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
yeah. The CabWriter protection will not save you from overwriting the texturing.
So that's definitely something I've found out is once you've textured a bunch of stuff, you're better off using the texture selection and just doing the new cabinet that you do instead of texturing the whole model. Otherwise, I mean, you do have to just go back and retexture. Like for example, these two doors right here are actually glass doors. So I need to go, and though we don't have a glass texture that we can use for that. So I have to go and do that manually.
But after you've done it manually, if you were to retexture, let's say again, like retexture your model again, the CabWriter Protect wouldn't keep that particular component a glass component.
It sounds like not.
Okay.
I can try it here. So if I protect these two parts and then just texture this cabinet again. Yeah, no.
I suppose.
So I'm wondering how that would work. It's common for us to have in a kitchen model, the uppers in one color and the base in another. So with that scenario right now, the software is not really conducive to that sort of situation, is it? Like you can't texture the uppers and the base differently.
Yes, you can.
Well, you
You
can.
Yeah, just select all the uppers.
So yeah, what you
Yeah,
would have to,
but it wouldn't stay that way if you were to retexture again. That's what I'm saying.
That's correct.
not
Now,
if you retextured the model.
Yes.
So you wouldn't want to do that after. What you'd have to do is what is nice is so let me just texture this cabinet differently somehow. I'll put the panel as Rift White Oak and select the cabinet and texture that selection. So that one's textured differently. So what you would have to do now, if I wanted to texture this one again, is just use this command to retrieve the cabinet defaults.
Okay.
And now the material, oh, that's odd. Shouldn't that have, Joe, shouldn't this have come up as wormy maple? I mean,
Which
wormy, whatever I had, chestnut. This cabinet here was textured with the wormy chestnut and this one with the white oak.
yeah,
The material should, if I retrieve the cabinet defaults from this cabinet here,
yeah,
shouldn't that come up with the wormy chestnut?
it should.
It doesn't.
Your Ruby console's in the way. I can't see what you're. Oh, maybe that's my Ruby console.
I was going to say, I don't have one open.
Okay, So
Greg, at times on the Mac, I have that same issue where I'll do a retrieve cabinet defaults, and it will look at the previous cabinet or the last version that I pulled up. And sometimes I gotta click and I'll do it a number of times to get it to
hey, Greg,
set.
how many models do you have open?
I've only had one.
He's asking me because I always have, us Mac users always have multiple models open. So, yeah.
What I think is happening there, I think you told me about this during the week, didn't you?
Yeah, I was having something like this happen with textures earlier. I'm going to close this file.
I think what may be happening there is there's a problem with Macs. If you have more than one model open at a time, or if you did have another model open and then you open a second one and close the first one, doesn't matter if it's closed. If it had been open and you open up another one, they talk. They share information. They aren't supposed to, but they do. It's because of the way Ruby has been implemented on the Mac. I think I can show you on the PC that doesn't happen. And I don't think it happens on the Mac if you open one model at a time, and when you close that model, close the application as well. In other words, only one model should be open in an application at a time, and you got to close the application and reopen it for another model.
And I just did that, and the same thing is happening.
And Joe, you schooled me on that. I always close my Mac models completely out and close out of the program and reopen the program. I still have that same condition occur at times.
Well, you know, we found something the other day that just on the Macs only, it is picking up it was picking up previous information, like you said, where you had to open it multiple times to get it to load. So one wonders how many other things are in there like that.
I'll look at this week on my Mac and see what I can figure out. But
I think, hold on, it's 1 second here. I think I might be figuring that there's, yeah, Joe, I think there's a problem. I think there's a problem with this one menu right here where I have for the doors and drawer panels. Because I've had, just when I started this presentation, I don't know if anyone noticed it, but when I opened up this materials and pulled it out of one of these cabinets, that one was empty. And that happens to me all the time where this one goes empty. And it's obviously, it's not changing, but look at the one above it. This one here that I've got cherry in now. If I just pulled it up from this cabinet here, which has cherry textured, and if I pull it up from this cabinet, it shows maple. So it's working correctly. I think there's something wrong with this particular one. I've noticed it numerous times when I open textures that this one ends up blanking out on me. And now it's not loading the material either. If I change it, watch, change it to walnut and texture this cabinet. So now if I pull up the menu, it should still be there, walnut. But now when I pull this cabinet up, I bet you it's still walnut. So we might want to look at this one. So, but if it was all working correctly, Melanie, it is stored in there, so you could go back and at least pull the settings out and then retexture it. So it does at least remember it. But if you do the texture model, it's going to texture everything with what's currently in there. So I'm hoping maybe in the future, we could convince Joe to maybe look at the materials that are stored with the cabinet and texture appropriately, but we got to go one step at a time.
I'm sorry, what are you asking?
If in the future, maybe you could actually, when you'd say texture model, you'd go in and look at the textures that are stored with each cabinet and texture appropriately, rather than have it be a global thing.
I'm still not understanding. You mean texturing one cabinet at a time?
Well, like, see this cabinet here and this cabinet here right now have different textures with them.
Yeah,
If I went and said texture model, it would texture both those cabinets with whatever's in the settings right now.
right.
Could you in the future, maybe if you said texture model right now, could you go to this cabinet and see what its textures were and texture this one this way?
Oh, you mean like if you redrew all of the cabinets, it uses the stored DNA.
Correct.
Yeah, I could make it, I could have it ask you whether you want to use the stored DNA or not, and if you said not, it would use what's in the CabWriter settings at the current time.
Yeah, that would solve what Melanie was asking about, where she textures things differently within the model.
Oh yeah, I can do that.
No, there we go.
But if a cabinet's not textured, it won't help you.
Well, right.
Yes, I can do that.
Cool. Yeah.
And while I'm at it, I'll do the protected thing too, Melanie. I'll fix that. So if you protect a piece, it'll keep the texture.
And then maybe we can look at this one menu item here. I really feel like there's something going on with it. Right there.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's just the Mac though.
Probably. Yeah, David, you've been doing better than me then, because he yells at me almost every day for having multiple models open. And I notice it sometimes whenever I notice oddities are happening when drawing, where things aren't drawing right, I'll quit out and reopen with the one. There's a lot of bleed through between the models.
There is, but it's solved a lot of them by closing them out and starting over again. And sometimes there seems to be bleed through even within the model, and I close it out and start over and it corrects it.
Right. Well, and you're right. We definitely fixed one the other day that it was loading like the previous information into the menu on the Mac. And I know there's another one that I see. I was telling Joe about it the other day in the production or the optimization menus, and then I couldn't repeat it. And but then yesterday it happened again. So I got to try to figure out how to make it happen more repeatedly so we can take a look at it.
Yeah.
But that's a internal SketchUp thing, so we have to kind of try to work around it when we find it. But if you can get one to repeat sometime, let us know. Maybe we can get on a Zoom with you.
Yeah, I'll just take a video of it too.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that.
Any other texturing questions? I will get those textures put up where you guys can get at them. And I'll try to figure out how to export colors from the Mac. And Joe can show us how to do it on the PC. Maybe that'll clue me in. And like I said, if that whole photo manipulation was beyond what you want to tackle, just let us let us know and I can always quickly do the textures for you. Then we can start building up a library of them that are already done.
Yeah, if we share them with each other, it would be a,
Yeah, save a lot of time there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably over time, what we can do maybe too is as we get more of them done, maybe we can just in future releases, we can add more to the stock ones too. All right. If there's no more texturing questions, I'll turn it over to Joe and he can show us about mid rails on
let's see.
Sorry.
Can you make me,
I don't remember if I give it to you or you requested.
good question. Let me,
I can make you the host. Do.
I can't request.
Okay. How about if I make you the host?
Okay, I'll accept.
Did it ask you?
No, it hasn't asked me, but I think you got to stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm trying to trying to figure out how to do. Oh, pause share. Okay. Stop share. There we go.
Let me know when you can see me.
Yep.
Everybody got me?
Yeah, fine. Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to start with the, we made some changes to the Styles and Rails report. It's no longer called the Styles and Rails report. And let me bring up a Word document here and see if I can make this bigger so you might be able to. Okay. We started out by changing the production documentation dialog box. So you now see this says rough lumber report. What we're trying to do is in the Styles and Rails report of old, we're making that a rough lumber report so that all of the rough lumber that's used in a product or project can be can appear on the rip cut and the cross cut report. How many of you use that report at all?
I use it all the time.
Who's that?
David from Florida. That's it. Ellen.
Okay, Ellen, yeah. Okay, so what we're trying to do is get all of the hardwood or rough lumber into that report. So we changed the name to rough lumber report. And when we create a basic scene set, we now create a rough lumber scene, not a Styles and Rails scene. Also, I changed the name of the labels for the labels. Changed the name to rough lumber. And down here, when you select milled parts reports, it'll say rough lumber, and likewise down here. So just be aware of all those changes. And also what I did was I added a rough lumber specification. Let me see if I can get this up here. By the way, I don't know if you know, but this little icon here, the one that says assign hatches, that brings up the materials tab. And notice down here, we now have something called rough lumber specifications. And what that does is these are sort of the industry standards for quarter material. 4/4 is typically rough cut to 1 1/8, and you can typically get a planed thickness of 13/16 out of it. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but they're all the same way. 5/4, it's typically cut to 1 3/8, and you can get 1 16 planed out of it. Now, that's industry standard, but what I found is depending on your supplier, these numbers can be different. And that's why we put that on this materials tab. So if your supplier, gives you different numbers or sells by different numbers, you can plug them in here so that they will calculate the rough lumber quarters appropriately. So that was sort of the second change. And as I said, the stiles and rails scene, I don't have one up here for this. Let me see. Let me bring this up. Okay, notice that the stiles and rails is no longer there, but there is one called rough lumber. And now the default layers that are included in the rough lumber scene are the base doors, the base draw fronts, the base end panels, the base face frame, and the same thing for the uppers. The other change we made is the toe kick applied faces used to be on the toe kick, or used to be on the base ladder layer. I moved them to the face frame layer because those are typically rough lumber parts and not plywood parts. So in a new model, if you created this, you would see the applied faces for the toe kick also on here. So this was an attempt to put all the rough lumber stuff in the rough lumber scene. Now, when you do your model, you might have some other layers with rough lumber, or you may not want to include some of these in there. So it's your responsibility to look at this and adjust what's in there to get the right rough lumber report.
Joe, in the rough lumber report, or in that scene rough lumber, if we chose just to use door rails and stiles, and we would just we would just go to the tabs menu and take all the things out of that scene that we don't want to calculate in a common delineated file.
Say that again.
Let's say, for instance, this rough lumber is including all the rails and stiles and door panels and everything else. If I just want to run a list of the rails and stiles of the doors, would I just go to the tags menu and take all the things out that I don't want it to calculate?
Well, first of all, if there's plywood parts in this rough lumber scene, it'll ignore them. Because they aren't hardwood. So it'll only look for rough lumber, number one. Number two, it'll show them based as the type of part they are. So I'll show you that report in a second, and you'll see that face frame stiles and rails are different from door stiles and rails, are different from ladder base parts. They're separated out.
But if he really wanted to, though, he could update this scene and turn off layers that he doesn't want to be on the scene, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's up to the user to do that.
Yep.
Just if I don't want the face frame in there, for instance, the base face frame in the upper face frame for some reason, I could turn them off and just update the seam. And now when the report is created, it will not include face frames, only doors and drawers. So, but that's what I'm saying. These are, I just gave you the default set. You can add to them or you can subtract to them by just adding layers or subtracting layers and updating the scene.
Okay.
Let me see. Talked about the ladder base and the default layers. So let me show you one of these reports. Let's see if I have one already generated. So now notice that this name here is now Rough Lumber Schedule. And if I open that up, and depending on how many different types of hardwood you have in here, you'll get, you know, the rip cuts will be by hardware or rough lumber type. I only have one in this particular model, but if I had more than one, you will get, they would be separated out. And this is the rip schedule at the moment. It's on my to-do list to separate the rip schedule just like the crosscut schedule. In other words, the crosscut schedule is face frame styles, face frame rails. That's all I have in this model. But if I had door styles and rails, they would be separate. If I had applied faces, they would be separate. If I had back panel styles and rails, they would be separate, and end panel styles and rails would be separate. So you could get a pretty big list here, and they'd all be broke out separate. And I want to do the same thing to the rip cut. And I may put a text box checkbox option on that to say keep the rip cuts as all together, or separate them out, and it would be your choice, the user's choice, how you wanted that displayed. Any questions?
And then there's the summary at the bottom. So total of 2 board feet of 4/4 and 37 of 5/4.
Right. Notice this 5/4. Greg has mentioned to me that he can get more out of a 4/4 sheet than the standard numbers, but that's why I put the thing on the materials tab, so you can put your own set of numbers in there. Okay, now I'm going to move on unless there's questions.
So this is all, you guys saw my email about estimating stuff and a bunch of you responded. I want to kind of collate that, and you know, in the future we can have some more discussions about that, but this is all hopefully starting to creep towards helping with estimating in the future. So I could envision, you know, this at some point we need to apply a waste factor to each of the types of lumber and those sorts of things to help in the estimating process too.
Yeah, as it is now, we have all the hooks where we can estimate the hardwood by quarter thickness, and we can estimate the plywood. So we're getting very close to being, and we can estimate the draw slides, and pretty soon we'll be able to estimate the number of hinges and types of hinges. So we're sort of moving toward a much better project estimation tool.
Yeah, and I'd like to see in the future these reports start showing, you know, the different boxes and how big they are and stuff, so that, anybody who's doing some sort of a linear footage or cabinet type estimation, that'll help with that as well.
Yeah, and that's not too hard to do. Not promising it for CabWriter 5, but I think for sure in CabWriter 6 we can do that. It's not a big problem.
Cool.
Okay, now I want to move on to
Hey, Joe, real quick before we forget it, could you just show us real quick how to export the colors, textures from on the PC?
oh, okay. Oh, I got it up already. So if I go in-house and if I want to export one of these, I'll just choose one at random here. White oak. Well, we already have that. Now let me take one from not in-house.
How about just some color?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
All right, there's one. There's the library for colors. So if I just take one at random, I can add it to the model. Now I can go in-house and I can export texture image right there, save as. So I could just save that anywhere, wherever I choose to save it, give it a name, and I can switch. Oh, no, it doesn't allow me to switch to something else. It'll save it as an SKM file. But I'm going to put that on my desktop and show you what an SKM file is. So I'll save this on my desktop as an SKM file. And there it is right there on my desktop. I don't know if you can see that. But if I change the name of that SKM file, instead of SKM, I change it to ZIP for zip. Now I can open it as a zip. I don't know what it's complaining about here. Okay, so now it's a zip, and I can open it as a zip. And this is what's inside the zip folder. Notice doc thumbnail.png. Well, that's the PNG file for that. So if I just drag that to my desktop and open it, it's nothing more than a colored file, a PNG file. So I can save that as a bitmap and give it the color name that I want. I would have to open this. Let me open it with oh, where's open with? There it is. I'll open it with one of my editors. Now I'll save it as a BNP. Right there. And I'll call it, I don't know, call it red, I guess.
So Joe, even though there's no vertical and horizontal for a color, do you still have to save one as a horizontal and one as,
yes,
because you need to grab it?
horizontal and red vertical. because it's going to treat it just like any other texture, like any other grain. Even though they'll come out looking the same, it needs to, when it finds a vertical piece of material, it's going to look for a vertical file. And when it sees a horizontal piece of material, it's going to look for a horizontal file. So yes, unfortunately, you do. But there we go. We got a red BMP. It should be red H, red space H, and then I can resave it as a red space H or V. And there you go. Put it in the folder and you're all set. Okay.
All right.
All right. So what was
We'll
I?
probably do up a video on this texturing stuff as well. So
Yeah. Okay. Now I want to see if I could do a bigger report, but I don't know what I've got here to do that. What about the new create basic scene set? Has anybody tried that yet? The expanded basic scene set? No?
I use it, Joe.
I'm sorry?
I use it.
You have? Okay. Have you had any problems with it?
No, I can't say I had any problems with it. No.
you, David, you've used the new one with all the elevations and sections.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. This model, which when you do elevations and sections, you've got lots of ways you need to look at it. You need to look at it this way for these cabinets, this way for these cabinets, this way for these. And you even have to look at it this way for the island, and then come around this way for the island, so on and so forth. Well, that's all done for you automatically. CabWriter now figures out those views. And for each view, it'll find out where the door and draw fronts are, and then it'll back the plane up by I think a foot. And then it'll also create another plane and go into the cabinets, I think half the dimension, 12 inches for the base and 6 inches for the uppers. And it'll figure all that out. It will then give you all of the elevation and section views. There's the elevation for elevation A view, and it'll automatically name them elevation A, elevation B, C, and D. If it should get to the end, it'll be A, B, so on and so forth. And likewise with the sections. And it'll create all the sections for you. In this model, there were 25 of them. It created 25 scenes automatically. And it's new yet, so there may be problems with it, but I don't know of any at the moment. But you can also change these. For instance, if I look in this scene, oh, let me pick a better one. This one. This one's, you look at that and you wonder how that came about. Well, the reason it came about, if I look at the section itself, notice this is section C. These are now labeled. S for section C, E for it. If it begins with an E, it's an elevation. If it begins with an S, it's a section. If it's BP, it's a base plan. If it's a UP, it's an upper plan. But the reason this came about is I have a cabinet right here that is very shallow. And when I went 6 inches into it, I actually got into the back of the cabinet. And so what I would do with this one is I would select that section and move it. Just bring it forward a little. And then you can use the draw CabWriter, create section from section plane. And I would say use the current one, section C, and include all the parts and redraw it. And now, if I look at section C, you notice it's a lot better. I moved it too much because this was the cabinet that was giving me troubles. So I got to move it back again a little bit, maybe another inch or so. But you'll see that kind of a problem where you've got to move the plane and redraw the scene. But it should happen very seldom because most cabinets are 13 inches deep or 24 inches deep. It'll also create one for the refrigerator that might look strange because refrigerators are really deep. And so a foot into the refrigerator may not quite get into some other cabinets. So you'll get some section views that need to be fixed for that reason. But this is where you can control how deep those section planes and elevation planes go. This is set for elevation offsets to be 12 inches. That means 12 inches in front of the cabinet. And this says the section offset is 6 inches. That places it 6 inches into the cabinet. You can change these and put your own dimensions in there. Any questions? Whoa, did I lose you guys?
No,
Nope.
Oh, your pictures are no longer on my screen.
I think everyone turned their video off.
Oh, okay. All right, so now I want to go over this is the, let me do the doors first. We can now put mid rails in the doors. However, it only applies to divided upper and divided base. The idea being that if you have something tall enough that you want a mid rail, it's probably a divided base anyway. And if it's not, rather than use a base cabinet, a standard base cabinet, use a divided base. And then you can draw the mid rails in the doors. In the divided uppers, the idea was that, a lot of people make this kind of cabinet where they put a divider in here and make this glass. So again, that could be a divided upper cabinet. And so these mid rails can be drawn, but only for divided base and upper cabinets.
What about, I thought it was refrigerator cabinets too.
No, the doors in the refrigerator cabinets, you can't put a divider.
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you were talking about side panels.
Nope,
Sorry.
not yet.
Never mind.
Okay, so in the case of doors, it's only the divided base and divided upper. And so let me show you what new defaults go with that. In the case of, notice I rearranged this whole thing, by the way. You may see that, but if not, what we did was we added 3 defaults for the divided base. One is the door mid-rail width. The width, this guy's width right here, this mid-rail. And then we have the end panel mid-rail width. I'll get into that in a second, but that's the width of this part right there. And we have the end panel mid-rail position. You know, where it goes here. You can put it any place here. Now the positions for the doors, let me show you how that comes about. If I edit this cabinet and I say use the stored defaults, notice there's a new column here called mid-rail. And there's an addition to the drop-down. You now have door, divided door, draw, and none. So the new one is the divided door. If you want a mid-rail in the door, you got to choose divided door. This works the same way, whether you want one or two doors. But now this gives specifies the dimension that you're going to place the mid-rail. And the way that works is that dimension is the distance from the bottom of the bottom rail. If I can get it to stick there. Come on. There we go. It's from the bottom of the bottom rail to the center of the mid rail. Notice that's 40 5/8. Oh, wrong cabinet. Oh, I'm talking about doors. So it's the bottom edge of the door itself, not the door opening, but the door itself, to the middle of the door. And it's 24 5/30. That's this number right here, 24 5/30. So that's how you specify. If I want to change this, let me change it to something like 30. Say okay. And say okay here. Redraw it. And now they've been drawn at 30. So the uppers work the same way. And again, it's from the bottom of the door to the midpoint of the mid rail. Okay, now the end panels kind of work the same way, except where you'll find the position for that is right here. And again, the way this works is you go from the bottom of the bottom rail to the middle that's 40 5/8. That's this number right here. So it will draw a mid rail at 40 5/8 inches up that has an end panel mid rail width of 3 1/4. This is 3 1/4. Now we decided not, to implement multiple mid rails because that very seldom happens. And if it does, you can simply use the native CabWriter tools and copy this and move it down, and the panel in between is nothing but a little block that you can do with native tools. So that's the way we implemented that. Now this works for the basic frame and panel. It works for the one-piece shaker frame and panel like this one. And it will also work, not at the moment, I'm still working on it, but it will also work for the cope and stick frame and panel. and it'll work on refrigerators. So let me bring up one of those. So notice here's a refrigerator cabinet, and we have a mid rail. So it'll work on those. And again, for all the styles, the basic style, the one piece shaker, and also the cope and stick. Any questions on that?
That's good.
Okay, I don't think there's much more to cover.
You cover how we get to the plugins folder on the PC and put materials into, it's kind of the same thing that Greg did for the Mac, do for the PC.
Yep. On the PC, if you open up the the folder Explorer, what you have to do on the PC, no, you can just go to your user directory. Let me do it this way. First of all, what I do is I put a pointer on my desktop. So all I have to do is click on my pointer. But this app data folder, this is my username, and then the app data folder. You don't see that unless you go to View. Where is it? Oh, here it is up here. If you go to View and then Options and View again, and you come down here and you'll find a place where it says Show Hidden Files and Folders, right there. So you go to View, Options, and View again, Show Hidden Files and Folders. And then that will display all of the system's files and folders. So it's located at the username, app data, roaming, SketchUp, SketchUp 21, SketchUp plugins. And what I do is I put I don't want to go through all of that, so I just put a pointer on my desktop, just drag and drop it to my desktop. And then you've got all of the contents of the plugins folders here. And so you can go to CabWriter, and right here is texture files. You got that, Melanie? Melanie? Greg, you there?
I'm here.
We lose Melanie?
No, I'm still here.
Oh,
Oh.
Sorry, I turned my mute on. So actually you kind of lost me after you got to View Hidden Folders.
Okay, you know how to go to your file folders or your file explorer, right?
Yep.
Okay, when you open the file explorer, you'll see this tab, View. This one right here.
Yeah, I followed you there. I got that, and I know how to view hidden folders.
Okay, so you went to View, then Options, and then View again, right?
Yep.
And as you scroll down, you'll find a place not too far down where it says show hidden files and folders.
Yeah.
Once you do that, you'll be able to see this folder called app data.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Yeah,
All right. And then go to roaming
yeah,
and then go to SketchUp.
yeah,
SketchUp 21.
yeah,
SketchUp again.
Yep.
Plugins.
okay,
Or actually what you want to do is back up one. Just go to this SketchUp, right?
okay,
And you'll see plugins there.
yeah,
Right click and say create shortcut right here.
shortcut. Create a shortcut.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Create a shortcut and then drag and drop that to your desktop.
Okay,
Okay.
Yep.
And that's how you get to your plugins.
uh, and so it's in the CabWriter menu, materials, right?
Yes.
Or textures.
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 Texture file, there's, oh yeah, texture files, there you go. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. By the way, you'll also see in there, you'll also see, you will see the hatch files too.
Yes.
Yep. Those are-
Okay, so you could do the same if you wanted to add hatch files.
Yep.
Okay. So you basically just have to get into that folder, whatever textures you want to add to CabWriter.
That's correct.
Okay,
Just remembering to put a space H and a space V after each of them.
okay, yes. Yeah.
Okay. By the
I
way,
kind of just follow what you have in there that, yeah.
Yeah,
I see
exactly.
what you're saying. Yeah,
okay. Before I'll stop in a second and ask for more questions, but there's a couple of things I wanted to cover because in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've come up with problems that people were having based on some things some things I learned and some other things that we try to make sure people are aware of. One is do not change the system axes. And I'll show you what I mean. If I do a view axis, I get the usual red, blue, and green axes. And their normal position is such that if I go to the front view, the red goes to the right, the blue goes up, the dotted red goes to the left. If I go to the top view, the red goes to the right, the green goes up, and the dotted green goes down, and the dotted red goes to the left. That's the standard axes. We've had some, one user drew an entire model, but before he did, he went to Tools, Axes, and changed the axes. He did this. So that the red was pointing to the left and the green was down. And what happened is when he drew his model, everything, all of the parts were reversed. It was like all of them were mirrored. They were drawn correctly, but mirrored. So what happened was, if you looked at the, if I look at base boxes, face frame, base doors. This data or groove for the tongue and groove The groove was on this side. And this groove here was on this side. We couldn't figure it out what was going on. And then I stumbled across the fact that there is this tool called Axes, where you can go in and change the system's axis. I've been using SketchUp since 2007, never even saw that tool and never used it. It deals with the system axes, and it's different than the one that deals with the component axis. That's this one right here. If you right click, unlock it, and right click again, you'll see it says change axes. That's for a single component, and it's very useful. There's a lot of times you need to do that, but never, ever, ever change the system's axes, because you will get the weirdest looking model you've ever seen. Things will be flipped and reversed, and you won't know what's going on.
Well, you need to thank me, Joe, for pointing that out to you.
I'm sorry?
You need to thank me for pointing that out to you.
Oh, was it you?
It was me.
Oh, okay. It threw me for a loop, I'll tell you, because like I said, I've used SketchUp since 2007, and I never saw that, never used it.
Well, what happened is I ended up drawing the model outside of the quadrant, and I thought it was a mistake when I drew the wall section and it was hanging over. And that's when I reset the system axis. I thought, well, that'll correct it. Well, it did. It really screwed it up.
The other problem a lot of people are having is naming of choosing names. I'll bring it up here. Using characters in names, and they get into trouble because they use one of the characters that we've listed as unusable. What happens is if you name a file and you put something like a slant in there, or a period in there, or something like that, the Mac is more forgiving. The PC is not. The file name gets used in a lot of places. For instance, it gets used as the project name in a model. If you go to the project page, you'll see it's whatever you name the file becomes the project name. And that project name's used to create folder names. So now you end up with illegal characters and folder names, and both the Mac and the PC are kind of touchy about that. So I've listed a whole bunch of things here that you shouldn't do. Some of them are legal, but you shouldn't do it anyway. But the forward and reverse slant, that's bad. Don't use that in any of your file names or your project name. Colons, asterisks, question marks, double quotes, single quotes, left or right angle bracket, the pipe, periods, carets, and commas. Those are bad characters to use. Commas, for instance, are used by the Ruby code to be, they separate things in arrays. And so, if you use a comma in a name, you'll end up, and if that name's used to create arrays or something like that, you get into big trouble. So be very careful about these things. I like to tell people to use just alphabetic characters and either a space or a hyphen or an underscore, but no other special characters, because you can get into trouble. There's one other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah. The other one that came up, Okay. We added this a while back, the enable CNC cutting, so that people who wanted to cut doors and drawers fronts on CNC machines could do that by saying, look, I'm going to cut my doors and drawers on a CNC machine, and they'd say yes here. But the thing that goes along with that is if you say yes here, you must provide a trim or edge banding thickness that is non-zero. Because what's going to happen is CabWriter is going to try and draw that door or draw front with banding around it. And if this is 0, it's trying to create banding of 0 width. And it's kind of the situation similar to dividing by 0. You just can't do it. So if you say yes here, then you have to provide some kind of width here. It can be inches or it can be millimeters, but you have to provide a width. You can also say no here and still cut the things on a CNC machine. In that case, it interprets this as an undersizing. In other words, it'll undersize the part on the CNC machine. But, oh, wait a minute, it'll undersize it in the cut list, not on the CNC machine, on the cut list. It'll undersize it. But it will cut it on the CNC machine at full dimensions, finished dimensions, which is not what you want because you want to be able to band your edges. So be careful of that. And I also put a much more human-friendly error when that occurs. It'll tell you you've got a non-zero dimension there and you need to fix it. So that was it. I just wanted to warn you about those because we've had those come up now. Any questions?
I have a comment on the pulling up some of the custom defaults. When you go to the toolbar
Yeah.
and you want to retrieve one of your saved defaults,
Yeah. Say that again.
when you want to retrieve your saved defaults, if you go to your
You mean retrieve defaults from a cabinet?
no, well, if you look on here on your toolbar where the folder icon is on the
Pulling up a,
Pulling up a save folder. Yeah.
yeah, if you pull that up, because I'll have some saved defaults in there, and I may use one or two. Is there any way in which I can see which file I have active? I'll load a file or load a default,
Yeah.
and then in the drop-down menu, I'll pick one,
Yep.
when I pick it, let's say any of them, it doesn't matter which one, I guess, but if it's a user default microwave base and you load that in,
Yep.
is there anywhere on this page that I can see it's the microwave default or the microwave? It has a directory where it is, but it doesn't tell me.
Yeah, I know what you're asking. I think you asked about this once before. The problem with that is the moment you make one change to this, it's no longer that file, right?
Right, and I'm attempting not to make changes to them. That's, sometimes I get myself in trouble with making changes to them, and I'm going through making cabinets and I got the wrong defaults in some of the units, but that's what I was trying to just bring up a file and use it, its native format rather than make individual changes here. Sometimes I get in trouble with that.
Yeah, my point is, I mean, it's very easy to get into trouble if you look at this. I mean, for instance, what I could do is if you load a file, I could put down here, loaded file is, and put the name of the file.
Or more specifically, the last loaded file.
Yeah, the last loaded file. But the moment you change a single parameter, that's not that file anymore.
Right, that'd be that file could be modified, but at least I know what I'm modifying. I'm modifying, at least I know which last file I am modifying. And I guess you've answered the question. It's just that, yeah, if you do make changes, it's not that file anymore, but the file it's not really, I guess you're creating a new setting. I mean, you're not really saving a file at any point unless you saved it, but
Yeah.
What you're saying is at least it would tell you what you started with, or what you loaded, and what your base was when, for anything you may have changed.
yeah, there may be floating vanity, for instance, versus a standard vanity. The distance off the floor, not having any, ladder or anything like that. What I have to do now is say, well, I'm getting ready to make a vanity. Sometimes I'll make, maybe it's not a good idea, but I'll put different rooms on the same. If I got 2 bathrooms, I'll just put them on the same file set and just go to different part of the page, and rather than create a new file for each individual bathroom. Because I'll do the cut list from both vanities, and that way I can combine the cut list from the scenes. But in this case, it's not a big deal, but I was just seeing if there was a way of, because I could have 2 different, I could be working with 2 different, I'm probably the only one, because I'm also the only one that changes system access. So I understand my issues, but sometimes I'll be working with 2 different CabWriter defaults within the same file.
Yeah, I certainly often run into that. I mean, I might have 4 or 5 different construction methods within the same file. Interestingly, I hardly ever use the saving of the defaults. I have a few that I start with, and then I keep retrieving the defaults from within the file all the time, and making modifications and moving on. But it's nice having all these different ways of doing it. I mean, I guess what you're asking then would be just knowing what your last loaded file was.
Yeah, but is your last loaded file one that you've loaded with that folder with the little up icon? Or is the last loaded file one you retrieved from a CabWriter, from a cabinet part, or is it one that you loaded from refresh factory settings? The problem is you don't really know. What I could do is when you use this open and load CabWriter defaults, I could load that file name into a little field down here. But the moment of anything changed, and how would I know that? What I would have to do is the moment anything changed, I'd have to wipe that field out. Because what you don't want is first a parameter to change for some reason, and then file and then save it as another file and have the name be the one that you started with but changed. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand that. If it's not too big of, yeah, I can see that be, once you make a change to it, it just goes blank, and that would be satisfactory for sure.
Right. And right at the moment, I don't know how let me give it some thought.
Now, maybe, this is part of learning how people are using it. I mean, for me, I was using the defaults menu, so I'm not having to go back and change parameters. I'm trying to think of what parameters I would have changed. A lot of times we're just using the same construction techniques over and over and over. Maybe a door will get taller, maybe a mid rail come in or something like that. But for the most part, the basics of the construction remains the same all the time. With the face frames, if I'm using that, or door styles and widths, I'm trying to keep them as a kind of as a standard construction method that pertains to my shop.
Probably
Greg, maybe you can, in each project, you just have a basic setting default and you just make changes to, obviously there's changes can be made in any project, but for the most part, most of it stays the same other than just a mention.
Yeah, I guess what happens to me is, certainly the simplest one that changes is like the upper cabinet height. You're right that the construction method stays the same, but that would change, and the materials change, obviously. I wish I was a little more disciplined. I'm trying to now. I've got a few different construction methods that I use, and I'm trying to save those as base files. But what ends up happening is I get into a corner where I need to have a wider style to clear a stove or something like that. So I make that change, and then maybe on the uppers and on a certain wall, I have some styles that are showing and ones that don't. And so I end up making so many changes within that file all the time that what I end up using more of is when I get back to that cabinet that I have to edit, I'll pull the parameters, I'll retrieve the defaults from that cabinet and then keep working on it, or draw another cabinet that same way. So it feels like, for me, my workflow after I do the original loading of those parameters, I make lots of changes within the file, and I just keep kind of circling around and pulling them out. But I'm not disciplined enough to save each of those as a separate file, because I feel like I wouldn't remember which one I'm talking about. I probably need to come up with a better naming convention or something.
No, my workflow goes the same as yours. What I use the save defaults for is when I have, like I said, I may have two different vanities on the same project, and they're totally different. And then I'll just load, and then within that, then once I make the change like Joe's talking about, then I'll just like you're doing, I'll make changes to that within and retrieve it off of the part for the defaults. But if I go to a different room, let's say, I just want to be sure that I'm not redrawing. I'll find
Hey, David, let me try something on you and see if it helps.
Okay.
Suppose I created another toolbar that with only one thing on it, or, well, I don't know, just another toolbar. Suppose it looked like this tags toolbar, where the drop down is always there. It's always up here in the tool area. And what you would have here is the names of all of the user, well, I suppose it could be user plus the other ones, but the names of all the, the files, the DXF file, or not the DXF files, but the CWF files. And you could pick one, and it would then load that file into the CabWriter settings. And it would be displayed up here. Now, all that means is you loaded that one into the CabWriter settings, and it'll always be there until you change it. However, there is no guarantee that what's actually in CabWriter settings is that file, because you could have changed you could have gone in here and
Correct.
changed
Yeah.
the parameter.
Or if you did a retrieve defaults from another cabinet and forgot that you'd done that.
Right.
I mean, the good news, I guess, and you probably have this happen to you all the time, is, and this happens to me, where I'll draw a cabinet and I'll realize, oh, those aren't the parameters I want at all. And you can do an undo right away and then go, fix it up. But Joe, that
Yeah, I
probably,
do that. I've done that a number of times. And again, it is like you said, I'll retrieve a default from a cabinet and then I'm moving on to a different cabinet and I haven't reset the parameters, but it's maybe it's not worthy of any changes at this point. I just wanted to know if there was a way, but it does tell you sooner or later that you've used the wrong parameters.
right.
You figure it out.
Okay. So I don't know what the conclusion there, but I'll give it some thought and see if I can come up with something.
Okay, all right.
Anything anybody else wants to talk about?
I have a simple question.
Yeah.
Is there a newer release of overall documentation for CabWriter, or because I only have CabWriter 3, I think is what the documentation is. Is there a new overall document for CabWriter in general? It covers everything, all the changes that have been made since CabWriter 3.
I am committed to do a CabWriter 5 user manual, which is basically taking CabWriter 3 and just updating it with all the changes in CabWriter 4 and 5.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if I had missed downloading something at some point.
No, what you missed is I just haven't had the time yet.
Come on, what's with you?
But you keep asking for changes.
I know. We're such a demanding group. I'm sorry.
I guess right now it's the release notes plus CabWriter 3, but yeah, it is on the list.
Yeah, so basically you just have to go through and you'd have to print off a history of all the release notes and add them as like appendix to CabWriter 3, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We're sorry.
No, that's fine.
No, I tried hard to do it for CabWriter 4, but I just didn't have the time. And but I'm committed to do it for CabWriter 5. There's been a
If you
lot
promise
of
not to
changes.
ask for any more changes for a month.
Will you be able to hold to that promise?
No, never. Well, I have to say, Joe kind of encourages it a bit sometimes.
Well, that's true. And he keeps making the changes, so you just want to keep asking for more,
Exactly. He's so accommodating. It's terrible. But it's like he's an enabler.
Okay.
All right, I think that's probably enough for one day, huh? Unless anybody else has another burning question.
No, thank you for your help.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah. Is this the kind of thing that you would be interested in doing on a regular basis, and would people be able to attend?
I mean, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I think the tool that Greg came up with for scheduling, like I've never seen that tool before. So was that useful for you, Greg, in trying to come up with some times?
Well, it is. This other thing I'm involved in, we use it all the time, and it just dawned on me that because otherwise picking a random spot, and this one was crazy, almost right off the bat, there was hardly any overlap, so that's why we ended up having the other one. But it is a great tool for that.
We are going to do this again next Saturday, same time.
No, it's Friday at noon.
Oh, Friday at noon?
Yep.
Okay.
That was another small overlap spot there.
No,
Those
I enjoy, especially if there's, you know, a lot of, like, I mean, there's been a lot of changes happened over the past few months. So, you know, it's definitely useful for me.
Well, there's going to be a lot more changes before we release it. So.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.